Hello, welcome back to my stream after a few weeks off. Nice summer vacation and just a bit of a reset and relaxation. But here we are back once again, here to do some development work of Node-RED itself. So this isn't about using Node-RED, this is some time I'm going to spend actually developing, bug fixing, whatever it may be, the core of Node-RED itself. So I'm just trying to remember how all this streaming lark works. I think I've clicked everything. I remember to unmute myself, which is always one schoolboy error. Mauricio, good to see you in the chat. Nice to see you there already before I even started, which is great. I hope you've had a good summer as well. Yeah, if you're in the chat watching live on Twitch, then please do say hi. If you're watching on YouTube replay, then do drop a comment. Let me know what you enjoyed, what you'd like to see more of, and all that good stuff. So what are we up to tonight? There's a few different things I thought we could look at. Whilst I've taken a bit of a break from doing the streaming, I've been quite busy doing Node-RED development work. There's a bunch of new stuff has landed over the last couple of weeks or is on its way. And then there's a couple of interesting issues have been raised over the last couple of days that actually might make nice little well-contained things to actually dig into and actually try and get fixed up in this hour or so that I'm going to be streaming. So yeah, maybe let's just dive in and blow some of the cobwebs. So although I've not been doing Node-RED work today through my day, I've been doing some admin paperworky type stuff. So I'm also slightly dusting my own brain off in terms of what I want to do to get going tonight. And I've got windows all over the place, so it's going to take me... I'm going to fumble a bit as I get going, but let's see where we are. First up, I need to remember... there we are. There's my screen. You can see that, hopefully. So we've got a number of issues, well, plenty of issues on the backlog. The couple that I thought would be interesting to look at tonight. In particular, there's this one that got raised just yesterday, which is an issue predominantly with the debug sidebar. And the issue is, so this guy's got a function node that is creating an array with an undefined value in it. But when he displays it, passes it to a debug node and displays it in the debug sidebar, debug shows that rather than being undefined is null. Now this is, we can sort of step through what's causing that. Why has the value gone from being undefined in the code to being null in the debug sidebar? When the true value is definitely undefined. So it's not that the value's being changed in the flow. It's purely how the debug sidebar is displaying the information. So I thought that might be actually a useful topic to discuss a bit around how the debug sidebar displays the message data. So that's plan A to cover, and in theory should be reasonably swift to get through. Some of the other stuff I've been doing recently is there's a whole bunch of work have gone in around some new stuff. What's this showing me? Okay, yeah. New stuff around subflows. And that's quite a big in, and I think I'm gonna save that for another time. The subflow work. It's just too much to get into right now. There's a fix I've done recently around, so we have a very rare issue that users have reported where nodes disappear. Or at least nodes they thought they'd deleted still seem to be somewhere, but they can't find them in the workspace. Now, this happens every now and then, in the sense of 3 or 4 times over the last year, maybe a couple more times than that. So it's a pretty rare issue, and we don't fully get what causes it, which is why the issue has lingered. But what often ends up happening is I get the users reporting the problem to send me their flow file, and I do some manual surgery on the flow file to fix it. So what we've done is added some code into the editor, so when you import a flow with this particular corruption, it now creates a new tab and puts all the quote-unquote lost nodes onto that tab and gives you a message about what's happened. So that's goodness, as it will, whilst it won't solve the underlying issue that causes the corruption, it will at least help a user recover it. There's been some other pull requests already merged in. One around... So this is laying some groundwork for some other work in the future. So we already have the disable editor setting, which can stop the runtime, stop Node-RED from exposing the editor. What we would still do, though, we'd still load all of the Node HTML resource into memory in the runtime so that it could be served, even though we disable the actual serving. So this is a change that has gone in that means if you've disabled the editor, we skip loading the HTML. It doesn't save a lot on startup time, maybe 1 second for a reasonably large install with a reasonable number of nodes. So yeah, it shaves off a bit of time. More importantly, it will reduce the resources because it's got less loaded into memory. But it also lays the groundwork for being able to load in modules into the runtime that provide resources that aren't nodes, which is a feature coming along, which again save for another week to talk about in some more detail. And then the other bit, which is what I'm actually actively working on at the moment, is improving the user experience when you have improve the user experience when you are trying to import nodes that you already have. Let me make this a bit bigger so you might be able to see it. This is where. There we are. Let me just improve this message. You already have those nodes. So, am I running? No, I'm not running. So what this is about is if you want to import the same flow twice, at the moment you can do that because we generate new node IDs for everything whenever you import them. So when you import a second version, they all get new IDs, they don't clash, it's a second copy. And that's good, and that works for those use cases. But let me just type and talk at the same time. Oh yeah. Let's see if that works. No. Ugh. Can't remember what my username and password is for the local instance. Anyway, here we are. Yeah, so by importing copies, that's normally what people want, but there's interesting uses around when you want to share subflows, for example. If I share a subflow with a colleague and they import it, they're using it, and then I need to provide them an update to that subflow. So I give them the JSON for that subflow and they import it again. Well, right now they would get a copy and it wouldn't update the one in place. So trying to improve that user experience to make it easier to share a flow with someone and have it be able to be updated by sharing an updated bit of JSON. So if I just re-import, so I've exported this bit of flow and I'm just going to re-import it exactly as is. So I've got to the point in terms of a logical flow where it detects that I'm importing nodes that I've already got, and now it prompts me saying, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to import a copy, which is what it would have done before, so a whole new copy of those nodes, and this is kind of at the limits of what I've done. You can view the changes and it brings up the node diff tool, and yeah, it doesn't quite, this is literally me just hacking in, seeing can I get the diff tool to show meaningful information about what you're importing. And I don't think I don't think it is meaningful. I don't think this is helpful to help you understand that I'm about to be adding in these two nodes. So yeah, need to work on that some more, because the other option, the other thing being, it would be too crude to just say import copy or overwrite nodes, as in the two extremes, because it might be I want to import a subflow and overwrite the existing subflow, but there might be, I might have also shared a useful flow. So it's a bit of one and a bit of the other, that actually I want a copy of some things, but I want to merge others. I don't know. I'm still working through that, but hopefully this will make for a more useful workflow when you're developing with others, sharing flows with others, making it easier to share updates. Yeah, so that's what I have been doing, but that's not what we're going to spend time on tonight. Let me just stash all this away in a temporary commit when I come back to it another time, because what we're going to do is go back and have a look at that issue that was raised. We're going to do this. I bet you can't see my terminal at all, can you? We're going to do this on the master branch because it is a bug fix for the current release. And again, if this is your first time following, we use the master branch is the current stable release. So that's the release that's out there. So bug fixes go into the master branch, and we have separately a dev branch, which is going to be the next release 1.2, where new features land. Because we're doing a bug fix, we are on master. I've got all my dependencies installed. Let me just make sure I think I'm up to date. We're all up to date. And we use grunt as the task runner, and we run grunt dev, which builds the editor, does a bunch of build tasks, and then starts Node-RED running. There we go, Node-RED. Oh, port in use. Marvelous. I think I accidentally killed Node-RED the wrong way just now. There we are. Kill that off. I'll try again. Yeah, so this is how I run Node-RED in development mode. Watches for changes on any of the files, rebuilds the editor if I edit editor code. It restarts the runtime if I modify runtime code or any node resources that need a restart. So that's now running. Let's reload. Okay, so let's look at this bug that was reported. Null instead of undefined. So as I say, if I just copy the code that was provided in the bug report and drop it straight into a function. So if you can make that out on the tiny screen, we've got a set, it's creating an empty array, pushes undefined, takes a copy of it to message.payload and returns the message. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, no, I'm not. I'm going to modify this debug node to write it both to the system console and to the debug window. So if we go to debug, oh, if I got something injecting, what's injecting? No, there. We don't want, okay, just get rid of that because we don't want debug filling up with stuff we're not interested in tonight. So now when I inject this, here you can see message.payload is an array with one element and that element is null. If we look at the system console, you can see it's printed out and it is correctly printed to the system console as undefined. Now that's because obviously in the runtime we have the raw value. We can just print it, and that we use util.log, I think. So it does the right thing. But it's harder to do the right thing when it comes to the debug sidebar, and that is because we have to transfer a representation of the message from the runtime to the browser so that the browser can present it. Now you may think, well, you can just JSON encode the message and pass it over. And well, you would be right if messages could only be JSON, but you need to remember that JSON is a tiny subset of what JavaScript objects can be, and in particular JSON has no way of representing the value undefined. If we no, let's not do it this way. Let's just put up a new terminal with a node shell. Let's make it big. Right, so if we say, let A equal an object, and we're going to have property B is 1, C is null, and D is undefined. So now when we inspect A, you can see we've got the values 1, null, and undefined. If we do a JSON.stringify of that, you can now see we've got B as 1 and C as null, but the D property has been lost because there is no way to represent undefined in JSON. But let's what should we do? So again, just to illustrate what we already do in the debug sidebar, if we were to set message.payload, what did I have? It was something like a.1, b.null, c undefined. Deploy and run that. You can see we get A as 1, B as null, and we don't get C, which is curious. I thought we might. Now, if we change this to show the complete message object, so I've injected the top one again, which has the array. Okay, again, we can still see it knows it's got the property 0, it's got an element, but it's null. If we inject this one, again, we don't have the C property. That's curious. I thought we handled that one, but yeah, that is curious. I thought we did handle undefined in that case. Anyway, so the fix for this issue is we need some way for the runtime to detect it's got an undefined when it's encoding it, and to pass that through to the editor, and for the editor to be able to display it. Now let's go and look at how all of this works. And all of this is done in he says, as he can't remember where all of this is done. Oh, my brain isn't quite in gear. Right, here we go. Yes, we'll ignore that for the moment. So here we are looking at debug.js. So this is the runtime code for the debug node. And in here, it has got... No, it hasn't. See, this is what I knew I'd make a mistake on. I'm trying to find it now. So this.input, so this is the input handler for messages arriving at the debug node. We don't worry about toStatus. We're not going to worry about that. So what it does is it calls prepare value. Oh, why am I being... Send debug. Send debug. Ah, here we are. Right. So the what debug does is after it's worked out what information, what property, whatever it might be, it needs to send to the editor, it uses this utility function red.util.encode object. And then the thing that needs encoding, and then it passes it to the comms subsystem to actually do the publishing. So what we actually need to look at, you can kind of tell this isn't code I've delved into for a little while, so I'm going around the houses slightly. We need to look at red util encode object. So in the source tree, we go have a look. We're in the Node-RED project, packages, node modules, at Node-RED, util, lib util, and encode object is one of the utility functions we provide, and as the doc says, this encodes an object to JSON without losing information about non-JSON types, such as buffer and function. And it's closely tied to its reverse within the editor. So yeah, any changes here need to be considered on the editor side as well. I'm not going to step through this in huge detail. I'm just trying to scan through it just to spot what we care about right now. I believe encode object, it does get called recursively. Does it get called recursively? No. It must do. It must do, and I just can't see it. But oh no, here we are. Safe JSON stringify. No, that's right. At some point, I am just going to have to stick some console.logs in here to see what we're doing. Bear with me. Right, we come into here. That's all good. Is array. Don't care about that. Oh, dead air. As I try and remember how this works. Somewhere in here, I'm not seeing the code I was expecting to see, and I can't for the life of me think why. So we're passing in, yeah, right. Console.log here, message.message. Right, you know, sometimes that's just what we do. So we go and trigger that one, and here we are. Okay, so do not confuse ourselves. I'm changing this back to just message.payload, not the complete message object. Here, undefined. So we are we have found the right bit of code. And it is, yeah, okay, we're here. It is an array, so we're coming down into here. And then that is generating. You see now I'm now getting slightly, I've now got a feeling this is actually going to be far more involved than I hoped it would be. So where are we? Right. Are we coming down into his array? See, I thought this was going to be just an easy one to spend half an hour knocking off to explain how the debug does its encoding, but I think I'm already tripping up over myself. Yeah, is array true? So we've definitely got an array. We're coming in here. Ah, right. That's fine. I understand why I didn't get that debug. So we come down here. Right. Yes, so it is an array. So it uses this safe JSON stringify, which is a library we use that can handle circular references and all of that. And it provides a function. So this function gets called for each sort of key value pair of the entire object. So if I stick in a key value, for example, and run that, let's have a look. Oh, right, that's nice. Running, we inject. So here you can see it's been called with 0 and undefined. Here we are, we're back on track. I know what's going on now. So this is the code, this is a special code we do which examines the key and the value to see how should it be encoded, which deals with things like truncating data that's too big to be sent. So we can truncate strings, how it handles arrays and the like. Yeah, well, there's a little gotcha there which we'll have to come back to another time. Value. So what we're looking for is we are looking for if the value is undefined. Okay, so which there is no if statement for. So we're going to do if value is undefined, then we're going to replace the value with, for now, just the string undefined like that. Okay, now let's see what everything makes of that. So now we inject that message, and so now you can see how rather than being null that we were getting before, it's now got the string undefined, because that is what we have, that's what we've hard-coded it, well, not hard-coded, that's what we've told it to replace any instance of undefined with. But we want to be able to do a bit better than just that. So what we're going to do is actually replace it with an object. Now you'll see if your eyes are scanning through this code, there are various places where, so here's a good example, a great sort of parallel to what we're trying to handle with here. So if a value were passed claims to be a number, but we find it's either not a number, it's infinity, which you can't encode in JSON, but are valid values. We actually replace the value with this object, which contains, it uses this __enc_, which stands for encoded. That's kind of a special flag to the editor to tell it this is a value, that it's an encoded value rather than a normal value. In the very unlikely, yes, okay, if a user has genuine data with __enc__ in it, that, you know, that's an extreme edge case that will trip things up. So, but for now, in absence of that being a problem, what we're going to do is, when we get undefined, we are going to pass through an encoded value and say its type is undefined. Okay, so that's now going to swap out that undefined for that special object. Now I'm not necessarily expecting this to do anything. Yeah, so there you can see it's displayed it, because the editor, whilst it's got the _enc true, it hasn't recognized it as an encoded value it knows what to do with, so it's displayed it as is. But what we can now do is go to the editor, and I had that file open just now when I was fumbling through it. So it's a file provided by the Debug Node, so we're in the Nodes package. I realize it's quite tiny on your screen, but it is debug utils, I think. He says there's plenty in here. Maybe not. Let me just... Of course, the good thing with having the __enc is I can just search for... Yeah, okay, so it's not in the debug node. It's actually... Just close that up. It's in the editor client JavaScript. So this is the core code for the editor. Util... Oh, sorry. UI utils. And again, it's one of those things I've never got around to lining up. Is in the runtime we call it util, and in the editor we call it utils with an S. One of those things that quirks of inconsistency that I've never got around to tidying up. But in here, so this has got a whole bunch of utility functions used throughout, and it's got handling of the enc flag. So what we want is, see, that's interesting. It already has code to handle undefined, but I don't think it ever quite gets here. What we're going to do is we're going to add another if statement, undefined, and we are going to stick. So if it's an encoded object and its type is undefined, we will insert a span, and I'll just use the text undefined for the moment. Don't think we can... Yeah, I think we can stick with that. So, yeah, and it's got the CSS of null. We'll reuse the styling of null. Let's reload. Look at debug. We fire it over. It's got one element, and 0 is now undefined. Job done. And if, in theory, if we inject the object... okay, it's a small buglet to fix, but so when we inject the array with an undefined value, it now shows up as undefined, which is great. When we inject the object with an undefined property, it now shows up with undefined. But if I collapse the object and it does this summary view, you might notice in the summary view it says C as an object, not undefined. And that's because the that summary view is generated somewhere else. I mean, still here, but I just need to go find. Oh, okay. I need to try and remember when we are generating the top level summary of an object. So that's the one we've just fixed. Header head. Is it header head? That genius naming. Let's just have a look. So if we use the inspector, have a look at, yeah, so it's the UI debug message object header. Message object header. So we are looking in the right place, I think, although we do see a few things called a few places where we use message object header. I just need to find the right, build message summary value. This is the function we want. Here we go. And what we want to do, so this is where it builds just that brief summary. Value is null. Let's type it. Sorry, I'm sort of phasing in and out of full sentences. Has own, this code could do with a bit of a tidy up, but I'm not going to do that right this second. Value dot type is undefined. So this is, again, similar logic to before, but we are doing it for undefined, for the object header, undefined. And we don't want. Okay, that's saved. In the background, it's already rebuilt the editor resources. We reload the editor. And now if we inject both of those, so great, you can see it says undefined there, and you can see it says undefined there, which is awesome. Now, one interesting thing, this lets you click a button here to copy the value. What happens if we copy that value? What JSON has that given us back? Sure enough, it has given us A and B as you expect, and C, it's given us the encoded version of undefined. Now, this is where, so we need to go fix that as well, but it is also where things will get a little fuzzy, because when you click that copy button, it copies the pure JSON representation of the object without the special encoding that we use. So obviously that is then going to lose the undefined value, because in pure JSON you cannot have undefined. So that is going to be in here. Add message controls, copy path, copy payload, copy payload. I wonder. Let's, this might be a wholly, entirely other bug that might need fixing. If we do, we're adding property D, which is going to be a buffer. And again, this is an object we do our special encoding scheme for. So you can see it knows it's a buffer. And it knows it's got its contents. If I copy that and go and have a look at what that's done, it's done the right thing. It's converted it to an array, and it has stripped out the metadata that is there. So it must be doing that somehow. How is it doing that? Because this is the code that gets run when we click that button, and it is just passing to our utility the message to copy. So what I think it does, we might see it in action here somewhere if I find the right excuse me whilst I think aloud. How's it doing it? I think it must be substituting the value in the object. If that makes sense. As in, I think, yeah, that's good. How's it? How is it doing it? Excuse me, as I just stare at my. I mean, all this code is like a number of years old. So, type hint build message element no. Decode object. How's this? Is it here some? Yes, it's here. So this is the function that it's given a value and a format, and it converts the value to its true type. So, and it's already got a line here for format equals undefined, set payload to undefined, which should do it, but for some reason it's not. Decode object is not used in this file anywhere. So let's go find where is decode object used. This could be a red herring. Decode object is used by the context sidebar, and well, we don't care about that for the purposes of tonight. So that is a red herring. Ignore that. Let's go back to where we were. Oh man, what's going on? Right. Somewhere in here, it does the right thing with the buffer. Now, is there any reason, as I scan further down, it's thrilling stuff, I know, as I mindlessly scroll through code and just trying to... Oh, there we go. There we go, maybe. I said that a bit quickly. Yeah, I did say that too quickly. What we want is what we want this to be is under how do we swap in the true value so when we JSON encode it, it gets the right thing? You know what, this is one of those things I think I'm close to saying, rather than me just try and talk and bore you all whilst I scroll through code trying to remind myself how this works. Yeah, it's a slight fly in the ointment. I was hoping to get this fully resolved, and I also realised just now that half my screen is off. You can't actually see half my IDE. There we are. There is one hack we could try doing. So clipboard, copy text. So this is the function that does the copying. And here it is. Yes, this is what I was looking for. And so, right. What I'm looking for is the code that runs when I hit copy value. What I've been fumbling over for the last couple of minutes is who's responsible for swapping out that encoded value with the true value. And I've been looking in the wrong place. So here we are in the copy text function that gets called when we click that button. And you can see here it does the stringify, and it's got a function to handle any special encoding. And here you can have if value.enc. So this is where we need to add if value.type equals undefined, return undefined. That's all we needed. Those 2 lines, 3 lines, if you count brackets. Probably should count brackets. So now when I inject both of those, so first one, here's the object with property C as being undefined. We copy the value, paste it in, and you can see we don't have a property C because you cannot JSON encode undefined. But the point is, it's gone. It's not the encoded version anymore. And out of interest, if we copy that array, what do we end up with? So in that instance, we are getting a null. Okay, so that's another edge case we're going to have to go have a look at. On this one, if I copy just the individual value of undefined, do I really still get, or has that just been in my, so I get the value of 1. Sorry, that was just me. At the moment on my clipboard, I've got the value of 1. If I copy undefined, I still have the value 1. Okay, so if you try and copy to your clipboard an undefined value, you get nothing. It doesn't change what's already on your clipboard. I can live with that. What's harder to live with is this copying an array, and that being an array with a null. Now, this is going to be trickier to solve, and I say that because we can't just drop those values. You know, it's one thing not to include the properties because they have an undefined value. If we had, let's change this array we're creating, where we surround that undefined. So we're pushing on value 1, then undefined, then the value 3. Okay, and let's inject that and see what we have. So we inject it and you can see we have 1 undefined 3. Okay, that's what we set. That's good. That's working. And now we hit copy value and paste it. Now we get 1 null 3. And again, that's because, I mean, that's what the code does. Is that correct or not? Well, there is no way we can create an array that looks like that. 1 undefined 3, because we have to JSON encode it. So one option would be just to drop those values. Well, then you'd end up with a 2-element array of 1, 3. Which is arguably less correct than 1 null 3. So I think on balance, given the limitations of what can be copied to JSON and what can't be, we are on edge case piled on top of edge case, but I think we can survive. The main fact is debug will now show the value is undefined properly. One quick test. If we get this debug to output message.payload2, something we know doesn't exist, what does that do? Yeah, see that already works. We've asked it to show us a property it doesn't exist. It is undefined, so it tells us it's undefined. So that works. Okay. Stop. Right. So there we go. We've got 1 undefined 3. Undefined is now being shown. It works for an array. It works for an object property. I'm also going to change this to show complete message object. And again, we inject that. We have an array of 3 elements. It tells us 1 undefined 3. Good. That's what we wanted. And the object. Payload's an object. A, B, C, D, and C is undefined. So that's working. So you know what? I think that's near enough. Well, that is all working. The fact that copy the payload, there's no way we can avoid the limitations of JSON encoding with that. So I think we'll just have to live with that as it would be nice if it did something else, but it doesn't. And nor can we reasonably make it do it. Cool. Right, so with all of that done, so we've got the fix in clipboard.js, that's good. And the other fix was in here for util lib util.js. I'm just going to take a quick look, because we've edited a runtime side, the runtime encoding function. We should have util lib util spec. So here we are. So these are the unit tests for this same file. So we should make sure we've got a unit test in here for what we've just done. Now, see, it already has handling of undefined, but what we're more interested in is handling undefined as a property of an array and as a property of an object. So for a start, well, as perhaps I should have started with anyway, I'm just going to go back in and no, we're just going to plow in and force this function in. We're going to do array containing undefined. So the message we want is going to contain, well, let's do exactly the test we did. I did 1 undefined 3 result. So we pass it to the function we're testing. Do I need to care about max length for the purposes of... No, I don't. Ooh, I'm lost. Where am I? Up here. So we encode it. Now, what we should get is the format property should be an array of 3, because that's what we've given it. we're going to parse it because the function has already stringified it to be sent over comms. And we want result JSON 0 should equal 1. Result JSON 2, as in the last element, should equal 3. So that's all as is behavior. That should work. And then 1. Yeah, I'm just going to hard bash this in. So it should be encoded, and the format should be, oh no, should equal undefined. Okay, so that handles the array case, and we're going to switch over kill node red. Let's make sure it has really killed. No, okay, there's something odd with this machine. Anyway, we are going to run the unit test. So we use Mocha as our test runner when we just want to run individual tests. All the tests are in a test subdirectory. These are unit tests, and we are in what are we in? Yeah, we're in node red. Why is that not? Yeah, are you really not going to tab complete for me? That's upsetting. Okay, where are we? We're in util lib util spec. Oh, it failed. Yeah, array containing undefined. Something failed. Line 802. Cannot read property should have undefined. 802. Okay, so why is that undefined? Let's just have a look. Result JSON 1. You know, if we're doing test-driven development, I would have written all these tests already and we'd be coming back. Oh, it's not format, it's type. That's why. There we are. So that test is now passing. Goodness. Now we want to do a very similar thing for wherever it deals with objects. Our encode object. Yeah, let's just stick it in here. Object with undefined property. So this time we are going to pass in, what should we do? A1, B undefined, C3. May as well be somewhat consistent. Then the format should equal object because it is an object. Because I'm going to cheat. Because we know the code works. We are going to print out what it actually gives us, and then we'll write the test to make sure that's what it looks like. Which I know is entirely the wrong way of doing it, but frankly, I want to go and have a cup of tea. So sometimes, because I didn't start writing the tests, I'm going to cheat finishing the tests. So result.json should have property A with a value of 1. Result.json should have property C3. And the result.json should have property B. And the result.json.b should have property enc true, and B should have property type undefined. Does that pass? And that passes. And just check. Yeah, object with undefined property. Awesome. So that's bug fixed, unit test written. Yeah, hopefully a bit of an explanation of how we get data to the debug sidebar, well, how we encode the data that gets passed over the WebSocket from the runtime to the editor. So final, let me show semicolon. Yeah, semicolon missing. It, to be honest, semicolons are so optional in JavaScript, and I haven't got sort of any of the standard JS linters set up to shout at me if I miss the odd semicolon. I will stick one in just because there's one everywhere else and it will look more consistent. But yeah, semicolons are far more optional in JavaScript than you may realize. Of course, yeah, well, there are some who say you shouldn't put in any unnecessary semicolons, and there are some who say you should use semicolons all the bloody time. I choose not to spend too much time worrying about them. As in, if my fingers hit semicolon, then awesome. If they don't, and it's not strictly needed, or it's the end of a block or something obvious, then I won't bother. So, a quick review of the changes. Let me resize this so you can see. So clipboard.js, so this was add the code to know how to copy the undefined values to the clipboard, or rather filter them out. Utils.js in the editor, so if we receive something that tells us it's undefined, then we display it properly as an undefined value, both in the main body of the debug message, but also in the object summary when the object's collapsed. Here we have the code in the runtime, which if it encounters an undefined value, then sends over that proper encoded version. And then the unit tests for passing over an undefined property of an array and an object, and those tests were passing. Awesome sauce. So let's commit all those. Handle undefined value in debug view of array and object. And this fixes issue number 2696. Committed, pushed. Done. And once GitHub Webhooks does its thing, the issue's closed. That's the nice thing about pushing fixes to master branch. GitHub will automatically close the issues for you if you do the right thing in the commit message. So that's good. We'll put that, well, that will be in the next release, whether it's the maintenance release or 1.2 at the end of September, or roughly end of September there and thereabouts. And with that, I think I've done enough. Just thinking whether to tease a little bit about some of the stuff I have been doing. So, yeah, I think it is time for tea. A quick tease of what I have been doing. Go have a look at the pull request and material if you want to know more. So I have been working on Mpm packaging for Subflows. So this is where you can export a subflow from the editor, add in some metadata, add in some boilerplate code around it, and then publish it to npm. And then another user can take that subflow and install it in their runtime, just like any other npm module, and it appears like any other node in the palette. You can edit it, you can set its properties, but you don't know it's a subflow. when you're in the editor, so you can't look at its internals. But it, yeah, so it would be another way for people to be able to easily create nodes and publish them. But yeah, it's quite, this was a bit of mind-bending work. And it was pleasantly surprising, although took quite a lot of thought and effort. Actually, the code changes were quite accessible. I didn't have to reinvent wheels to make this work, because of work and groundwork laid over the last 18 months into the runtime about how we model what a flow is and what a subflow is. And it turned out actually to fit in fairly seamlessly. I say fairly seamlessly, I mean it's still 752 lines added, or changes, 282 removed, but yeah, so that's quite cool, but it needs more work. It needs more testing and verification. We also need we need to make it easier to create the subflow module, 'cause like I said, at the moment it has to contain a bunch of boilerplate stuff that in fact, so the pull request includes an example tar gz. If I just open it up, where am I? So this is what the internals of a subflow npm module would look like. Package.json, as you will already be familiar with if you create nodes, and it points at the JavaScript file. Now, one of the open points of discussion is, should this still say nodes, or should we have a separate entry saying subflows, in which case we could point straight to the JSON. Now, npm have historically had terms of use that says npm modules must have functional JavaScript code in them. So the design's gone down this route of, it's again slightly cheeky, but it's got JavaScript in that is responsible for loading up, reading from the file system, the JSON file. Here is the subflow JSON. Read it from the file system and parse it to an object, and then call this new function register subflow. Which is when I talk about boilerplate code. I mean, this is absolute boilerplate. Just load the JSON, parse it, and then pass the parsed version to this register subflow function, and everything else gets extracted out of the JSON. So the help text, the editor UI, the icon, or the configuration of the icon, the color, its properties, eventually the help, in fact the help text, that's one to check actually. I think the help text I pull out, that all comes straight out of the JSON that can be exported out of Node-RED. So that's why we have this subflow.js, which is absolute boilerplate code, just so that we can live by the spirit of the npm terms of use. That said, I did go and have another look, and I don't know if this has been updated since the recent acquisition of npm by GitHub. I've gone blank. Anyway, yeah, GitHub. Their terms of use now say that the npm package has to be compatible, or the TGZ you upload or publish has to be compatible with the npm client. That's the only term it uses in terms of contents. It talks a lot about you can't use it as databases, you can't use it to publish images. But but it quantifies that as saying it has to be compatible with the npm client. Well, this is a package.json. If there were functional dependencies, this would have dependencies listed as any other npm module would. So yeah, need to think through about whether we could get away with it being just the package.json file and the subflow.json file. I suspect we will at least initially stick with the JavaScript needing to be there as well for now, until it might get more obvious as to what the right approach will be. And this subflow.json excuse me, it's a slightly modified JSON that the editor doesn't currently spit out. It's 99% of what the editor spits out, just slightly reorganized. So rather than being an array, it has this top level object, which is the subflow, and then it has this flow property, which is the array of nodes inside the subflow. So that's that's how that all works. So we want to look at some tooling. So we've got Node-RED Nodegen, which is the tool created for taking a function node and generating an npm module for it. And Nodegen can also handle Swagger, OpenAPI, Web of Things definitions to generate nodes. So one of the pieces of work I'm looking at as well is updating Nodegen so that it can generate, apply you give it the JSON of a subflow and it can generate all of this boilerplate for you and give you a TGZ file. And as part of all of that, looking at adding in, this is kind of my just brain dump of the stuff I'm thinking about. Adding a UI component to Nodegen so that if you install Nodegen into Node-RED, you get a new sidebar in the editor that lets you take advantage of the Nodegen functionality from within the editor. So this whole generating a subflow TGZ file wouldn't be something in the core of Node-RED. It would be something provided by Nodegen. And if that was something people were interested in doing, they could optionally install Nodegen. Now we've got some challenges with Nodegen. Because of the Swagger functionality, because of the Web of Things functionality, its install footprint has got way out of hand. It's a few hundred megabytes for what really should not be much more than some text template, some templating and code generation. But it's got hundreds of megabytes of stuff because of the Swagger, OpenAPI, and Web of Things code. So looking at what sort of refactoring we can do with Nodegen to try and pare that back so that for users who don't care about Swagger or Web of Things, that they're able to install pieces of Nodegen and benefit from the smaller, more discrete pieces. But anyway, I digress. This is stuff I would like to start making progress on in 1.2. 1.2 will likely have support for subflow modules, but unless you're watching this live stream on the YouTube, we probably won't highlight it as a headline feature. I think in 1.2 it may well be a experimental feature, if you like, that users can experiment with, but we wouldn't class it as production ready in 1.2. But it's one of those things we need to get it out, get more hands testing in more testing out more of the features of subflows and what happens when they're packaged up. I was quite pleased I found nested subflows. So when you've got a subflow that contains subflows that contain subflows, that just works, which was awesome to discover, because I thought that was going to get very nasty to try and pick apart and get working, but it seemed to just work. Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. I mean, the cool thing is allowing users to create useful nodes that without having to write the JavaScript. So there's also a slight worry that we now invite a huge rush of novice created nodes into the Flow library. So we may have to have a little think about the continued thoughts around improving sort of just the general quality control of the Flow library and what we can do to keep that quality up. And the other thing this won't support, and I'll say this now quite clearly, it won't support creating custom dashboard nodes published this way yet. There's some other design work going on about being able to support dashboard nodes inside subflows. That's an existing restriction we have. And once we've solved that in the general case, we'll find that can be solved in a way that these modules will be able to take advantage of as well. Right. And Mauricio, can we have something like that for themes? Well, yeah, we're interesting to look at what other tooling we can provide to make it easy to create these modules. But again, how much of that themes are slightly different, because that's not something people will want to create themselves in the Node-RED editor. Or maybe people do want to be able to customize their theme in the Node-RED editor. I don't know, but still, looking at more interesting ways to be able to generate plugins for Node-RED, whether they're themes, UI contributions. So the other thing I'm looking at is how could Nodegen contribute a sidebar when it doesn't add a node to the palette? And what else do we need to do to support that properly? So again, that's going to be a really interesting thread, because that unlocks a whole bunch of functionality like the flow linter, the flow debugger, features that we wouldn't necessarily want hard-coded into the core of Node-RED or the editor, to allow more flexibility for those who embed Node-RED, but want to have a nice strong way for people to be able to create plugins to add in custom top-level functionality. But there we go. I definitely need to go get a drink. My throat is had enough talking tonight. So there we go. Thanks for sticking around, guys. Always good to chat. And I see no reason. I will be back same time, same place next week, and for a regular run. As ever, let me know through whatever medium of commenting that will reach me if there's anything particularly you'd like to see me cover or discuss. I'm toying with at some point doing some more streams about using Node-RED. So I've been very clear that this is about developing Node-RED. But yeah, might do some around using Node-RED, and that may well be something I do more tied up in the day job on the IBM Developer Twitch stream, which there's lots of great content there if you're interested in AI and a whole bunch of other topics that they stream on pretty regularly over on the IBM Developer Twitch stream. So yeah, I might do an occasional one over with them, more around using Node-RED, doing interesting things with Node-RED around AI, IBM services and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, this channel, this is going to stay focused on my development work on Node-RED, and just give me a chance to keep you guys updated with what I'm doing and let you guys ask questions and provide feedback as you see fit. Cool. Right. I'm going to try and remember how I stop streaming so I don't keep talking all night. Have a great week. I hope you're all staying safe, wherever in the world you are, whatever else is going on. And yeah, stay safe, stay sensible, and say hi. And I'll see you next week. Bye all.